We're back at 8:13 now to a difficult subject, but a very important one: emotional abuse. An estimated 20 million women a year are victims, but since there are not any physical scars, it's too often ignored. Yet for the woman living in an emotionally abusive relationship, it is their own private prison. Here's a glimpse into their lives in their own words.
He called me fat. He called me stupid. He called me ugly. He called me worthless.
I had been called words that I'd never ever heard, except maybe on an R-rated movie. You're so fat. You're so ugly. Who else would want you?
He told me all I really needed you for was to make babies. And now that I have my children, you're disposable. You're not a mom at all. You don't know how to be a mom.
If we went to parties, he would say to me out in the car, please keep my mouth shut, because he didn't want other people to realize how stupid I was.
We were at a restaurant one night having dinner, and out of the blue he started yelling and screaming. I ran to the bathroom, and I took a paper towel from the bathroom, and I pushed the words to the paper towel.
He spent so much time telling me how bad I was that I believed that I was nothing.
I'm focusing so much right now on protecting myself. Your words have destroyed me. I feel like I'm dying inside.
I was so wrapped up into how much hurt I was going through and how maybe today I could make it a little bit better, and maybe I could cook his meal a little better, or maybe the sex would be even a little better.
We weren't even sleeping in the same bed anymore. And I remember an occasion where my children and I decided it was time to go to bed. So I laid with them in their bedroom, and he walked in, and he looked at the children and said, I love you. This is Daddy. Good night. And then he looked at me and he said, I hate you. I hope you die in your sleep.
And we're going to learn more about emotional abuse and what can be done and why it happens in the first place right after this. Change. Suddenly, did it go from I love you, this terrible experience you had? You were married here. Good morning to both of you. Thanks so much for children, and because she right before the break, we're calling her. And now we want to talk with one of the women we heard in our piece right before the break. We're calling her Jane Doe because she asked that her identity be kept secret for the sake of her small children and because she fears retaliation by her ex-husband. Psychiatrist Gail Saltz is a Today contributor. Good morning to both of you. Thanks so much for being here.
Good morning.
Because I know it's very painful for you to relive this terrible experience you had. You were married for 12 years, is that right?
That is correct, Katie.
And did the behavior of your husband change suddenly? Did it go from I love you to I hate you, or was it sort of slow and insidious?
It was a slow process. You know, when we became engaged, it was you're in love, you fall in love. You make that commitment for marriage, for better, for worse. And there were times that the words would come out and I would really brush them off. This was for better, for worse. I made a commitment, and my attitude was we're going to get through it.
And when he would say these ugly things to you, I mean, what a jerk, what a creep. You know, would you say don't say that to me? In other words, would you stand up for yourself? Or
I truly did not stand up for myself. I felt as though I needed to obey him. I was told, if you just obey me, we'd get along better. I didn't want to upset him in any way. I wanted to be the peacekeeper. I wanted to be a peacemaker. I would just brush it off and let it go.
And in fact, emotional abuse is really about control, isn't it? I mean, it seems from what we heard in the piece from you and the other woman, it's like controlling by being nasty, mean, and pushing that person's self-esteem through the floor.
You know, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this are wondering, well, what's the difference between, you know, having a fight with my husband or having meanness toward each other,
or him being short and annoyed.
Exactly, and there is a difference because emotional abuse is about power, about control, about using criticism, and importantly, isolating that person from their friends, from their family, and making them utterly dependent on you with their words of you are nothing, you are worthless without me, you need me. This kind of complete destruction of your self-esteem And it of course, as she said, there probably were little signs up front that didn't seem so obvious. Maybe he was charming initially, but at the same time, that
Maybe had a temper that came out at different times,
or even would say little things, you know, I don't really want you to be with that sister or that friend. You know, you kind of belong to me.
Did you notice that at the very beginning?
Yeah, I think the best word to describe it truly is isolation. I was not allowed to do anything without his permission. I was completely isolated by family members that I loved, brothers, sisters, and it occurred on both sides of the family, not only my own, but on his side of the family as well.
Well, the pathology of these people, I think, is fascinating because they're the crazy ones, and they're crazy making, and they're like toxic.
Well, it is, you know, sometimes we refer to this as a toxic relationship, but it's important to realize that, in fact, it is abuse, and it's every bit potentially as damaging as physical abuse because it robs you of your judgment. This is what happens to people involved, men or women who are the victims. They no longer trust their own judgment. They no longer sort of know what's going on, what's right, what's wrong,
and they start believing the garbage that they're being told.
Exactly.
Right?
And that's how
and
they control
lose their sense of self.
Lose their sense of self.
Did you find that to be the case?
Absolutely. You know, after a while, when those words are thrown at you every single day, you truly start to believe that that is who you are.
It is a brainwashing. It is a brainwashing, and that's why when you say, well, why don't you just leave? Because you really buy into this. If I leave, he's right, I'll have nobody.
Well,
no one will love me. I'll be alone.
That keeps a lot of people in bad relationships.
Yes, it does.
They're terrified of being alone.
Correct.
They're terrified of never finding another person, don't you think?
I think that's true, but this is one step further where not only will they be alone, but they're bad. They deserve punishment. They deserve these things that are happening to them.
Weird.
They believe
it is kind of a brainwashing. Well, we've got signs of emotional abuse because I want to be helpful to people out there who might be trying to figure out. And by the way, men are emotionally abused too.
In fact, not only do I want to make that point, but it's even harder for men to get help and say so.
Because it's
they're
so
even more
emasculating,
humiliating.
right?
Exactly.
Right. Okay, so signs of emotional abuse. Your partner controls your life and isolates you. We mentioned that. Tells you no one else would want you. That's a way of making you feel so dependent, right?
Completely dependent on them.
Criticizes you for everything, and you begin to question your judgment. Now, when it comes to what you can do about it, let's go through those if we could. Realize emotional abuse is abuse. Know that you are not to blame.
Yes.
Which is a hard thing to realize.
Very, very difficult. The abused one often feels they deserve punishment. They must have been doing something to ask for this, and it's very hard to get out of that.
Find people to help. Know that you can get out and regain your strength and understand your vulnerability. I'm just curious, how did you finally say, I am not going to take this anymore. I'm mad as hell, and this guy is the biggest, creepiest jerk I've ever met. Can you tell I don't really like this person? But I mean, that's so disgusting.
Yeah.
Where does he get off, by the way? Anyway, so when did you get to the point where you said, I'm out of here?
Katie, for me, it was to the point when I realized a few things. Number one, that it was affecting my children. When he would say those mean, cruel things, a lot of times the children were present, and he would reiterate it.
And what kind of role model is that for your kids? That's so, I hope you die in your sleep. That must have been so disturbing for them,
not only
right?
that, but down the road, those are people who will grow up to enter abusive relationships because, as I said, understand your vulnerability. Who's vulnerable? It's the people who've had past abuse or seen past abuse. It feels familiar, and they repeat those relationships.
So you finally said, this is not healthy for my children. That's important because I think that's really what catapults people into taking action, Gail. They think, well, it's not about me, but I'm ruining the lives of innocent children here by participating or accepting this kind of behavior.
You know, if you leave your children, whatever reason you leave, certainly you need to get out. But you should know that your children will be vulnerable to either entering or being an abuser themselves.
So how can you encourage very quickly other women and men to get the heck out of these relationships?
You know, I read a beautiful quote, and it's, when all you've known is sadness and pain, happiness can be a very scary place. But we all deserve happiness, and I think women need to realize is that regardless of cultural, religious, or financial situations that may be difficult to leave, happiness, we all deserve happiness.
All right, well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us, because as I said, I know it was very difficult for you. And Gail, as always, thank you. And we'll be back with more of Today, but first, these messages and your local news.